wondering how I got into this mix. Mind playing tricks and I'm fiending for a fix. Habits overriding, imploding into explosion. Tapering away like ocean coastal erosion.
Welcome to Conscious Resistance News Wrap-Up. My name is Derek Bros. Today is March 21st, 2015, and you are listening to the Conscious Resistance Network. Thank you guys for tuning in for another week. I hope your week was filled with love, joy, peace, or at least some kind of fun for you. Hopefully you are taking steps every day, every moment to free your heart, free your mind, and free your physical body. Educating yourself about the world around you. Educating yourself about the philosophy that can free you from the clutches of those who wish to control others. And educating yourself on the practices, the very personal, individual practices that can help you free your own mind. And in general, I hope that you had a good week. Yeah, it's been kind of crazy for me. Been dealing with some stuff in my home life, but I got to see my family this week. It was my mom's 50th birthday. Yay, Mom! My mom's a badass. Haven't always got along with her, but she's a badass. And she taught me to question authority. I don't think she exactly remembers it that way when I talk to her about it and I tell her, Mom, you did this to me. You told me if I was ever in any kind of trouble and a police officer or a teacher or a principal told me to do something and it was wrong, and I knew it was wrong, that I shouldn't listen. And you created a monster. Now I can't listen to authority, especially when I know they're wrong. But anyways, that's been my week, hanging out with family. I finished the book. The Conscious Resistance book is complete. Me and John Vibes are done writing it. It's done being edited. It's done being formatted. It is already in the finished PDF version. It'll be sent off to the printers on Monday morning, and just in time for the Free Your Mind Conference 3 in Philadelphia, April 10th through the 12th, which is exactly 3 weeks away. John and I will be speaking on Sunday, April 12th, and that will be the official release of the book and in physical version. And from that point on, you'll be able to order it online. It'll be publicly available for download through the PDF. We're working on getting the audio versions, the audiobook versions finished. There'll be a Spanish version coming soon and a Spanish audiobook as well. So lots of good things happening for me. And if you want to find out more about the book, go to theconsciousresistance.com, check out the book tab, and you'll find all the info you can on there. So every week on the Conscious Resistance News, I cover all of my top articles. I'm a freelance journalist who writes for thelibertybeat.com, theantimedia.org, benswan.com, which, by the way, is soon to transition, and you'll hear this first from me because I don't even think this has been announced. benswan.com is going to transition to truthandmedia.com. They're changing the branding, which I think is probably a good idea. So write for Ben Swan, soon to be truthandmedia.com. And, of course, do things with the Conscious Resistance Network and the Houston Freethinkers Activist Group. And just a couple of weeks away, I'll be joining the team of Mint Press News as their First Amendment, Fourth Amendment writer, covering surveillance issues and much, much more. And on that note, I just recently found out that I will be going to Detroit in late April, early May, April 27th to May 3rd. The Detroit area, I've got places to stay. I'm looking for contacts and stories, community gardens, community spaces, showing the side of the city that most people don't know about, that the city is still thriving and coming together and the community is helping each other. What's happening in the Detroit Water Brigade, their fight to keep the people of Detroit getting water despite the city trying to shut it off. Dale Brown and Detroit Threat Management, which is a private security force, you could say, not necessarily police, but security force that is competing with the Detroit PD since they're so slow on their call and response times. And also whispers of another black site like we saw recently in Chicago's Homan Square in the Detroit area. If you have other ideas, other stories, people, interviews I should do, articles I should write while out there, please get in touch with me at derek@theconsciousresistance.com. I'm going to try to have every single day that I'm out there, nothing going to waste, and just running around doing interviews, shooting video, making sure I can get as much content as possible and bring that back to you guys. So please get in touch if you have some ideas. So as I said, we cover all of my top stories for the week. I write a whole bunch. Those can all be found at derekbros.contently.com. Derek Bros, it's my name. Contently, contently.com. And it has all of my articles for all of the places I just listed, because I don't have nearly enough time to cover all of the topics, but I think they're all important, which is why I write about them. But every week here, we cover my top 4 or 5 stories. This week, we're going to be covering the Mexico 43, the parents of the Mexico 43, the missing students who are traveling in the United States trying to get some justice and help. This week in surveillance news, we'll go into, of course, keeping up with what's happening with StingRays and more information regarding those devices. We're going to talk about private or for-profit prisons. We're going to talk about the differences in protesting and action in the United States and on the international scene. What's the difference and how these populations handle themselves. And then we'll talk about Russia and the ongoing situation there. So let's get into it. First off, we've had a couple of new things added to the Conscious Resistance Network, theconsciousresistance.com, which is the home for the Conscious Resistance Network. Just posted this morning, Danilo, aka Peaceful Anarchism, posted an interview with Ian Freeman, who some of you may know as the host and founder of Free Talk Live on the Liberty Radio Network, LRN. Been doing that for quite some time, very involved in the Free State Project, a proponent of the Free State Project, and a good dude, good activist. Check out that interview. Katie Chaos posted, Things Cop Apologists Say. You might want to read that one. And of course we got my video of my news from last week. Dominic posted Ukrainian Nightmare. Danilo also posted Taxation Hinders Progress and Bleeds an Economy Dry. And our last music spotlight was Markandeya. Song's called Transition Honeybee, which is super awesome song. If you guys haven't heard it yet, check it out. And today we will be releasing another music spotlight for this week. And every week on the music tab on our website, you can find new music of all types. If you have ideas, doesn't matter what genre, if it's a positive, conscious, social justice, socially aware musician that makes metal, hip-hop, country, whatever it is, if it's something we can jam and share and help give them some love, because our evolution, our revolution is going to need some music, and we need to support these artists if they're going to be able to survive and continue to make their music in this crazy world. Being an agorist is not just about building alternative institutions of government, but it's also about supporting and building alternative forms of culture. Like, we don't want to buy. If you look at everything in this mainstream, and I've really struggled for a while to find the exact right word for this middle of the road culture, but look at the music that's on the radio, look at the movies that are promoted in the mainstream, that everything that's on the surface level, right? That's not, when you don't go dig deeper, it's crap, it's generic, and it's often promoting the message that the ruling class wants the masses to believe or to follow, which, whether that means like get fucked up and party, don't care about yourself, or be distracted, or care about the issues from this angle, or whatever it may be. So it's important to support musicians, artists who are conscious and aware and doing what they do and making music, and giving those of us in the musical marketplace another option to choose from that doesn't have to be crap. Because you ever hear a song and like you really dig the tone, the music, the beat, whatever it may be, even some of the lyrics maybe, but then the person is extremely just, I don't know, either just vulgar or the message is just like really shitty, and you're like, wow, I don't want to say those words, I don't want to think like that. Yeah, it's disappointing. So I always support awesome music with a positive message. It goes hand in hand, and it's great to see. So check out that stuff on our music spotlight page on theconsciousresistance.com. Now let's get into the news. As I said, we're going to start with talking about the parents of the missing Mexico 43, which are the students who have been missing from Mexico since September 26, 2014, from Guerrero, Mexico. And this past week on Wednesday, some of the parents of those students were here in Houston, as I said, as part of their tour, their speaking tour, traveling tour, going around the country, which will end in mid-April at the United Nations in New York asking, and I don't like the United Nations, but I definitely understand that these families are feeling pretty desperate, and most likely from their viewpoint, they think this is, okay, our government won't do anything about it. In fact, our local government and possibly the federal government is covering up or had some involvement in this. So we are not getting any justice. We're going to travel through the United States and tell our story. And on April 28th, we'll be going to the United Nations in New York to ask them to investigate the human rights violations going on in Mexico. So the story of these families and these children is they were students teachers in training, students training to be teachers, and specifically at a community school that is, for all intents and purposes, seems pretty agorist. It's definitely outside of the governmental system, and they had their own way of operating. And the students had been protesting local corruption, and apparently were headed to go protest a speaking event where the mayor's wife was going to be at. And on the way, their buses were intercepted by gangs, and most likely by police working with the gangs. We don't really know the full story yet. The students have not been found, but this is what some of the details that have been coming forth in the past months. And then they disappeared, and they haven't been found. And there's been mass graves that have been found with bones of people, and they thought it was the students, and they've studied them and looked at them, and several times they thought they found the kids, but it ended up not being them. And at this point, the parents are simply trying to find justice in a really fucked up, crazy situation. I mean, in some ways, I know people like Jeff Berwick and others say, well, go to Mexico. Mexico is much more free in the than the United States because business-wise, and I definitely understand that aspect. There's, you can go start a business without having to deal with regulations and certain licenses that a small businessman on the side of the road trying to start a fruit stand or something similar, you have to go through all these hoops, or you have to pay all these licenses and fees, etc., to start a business here in the United States, and that's one of the big complaints. And I definitely understand the difference between that and how easy it might be to do something like that in Mexico. But there's also other sides to this. I mean, that may be true, but if the average Mexican citizen is so poor that they can't even afford to do that, then are they really that more free? And is it right for foreigners and other people from, say, a more privileged country or a more fortunate country like the United States to say, we have the freedom to be mobile and to move around, so let's move to the place where it's cheapest and easiest for us to live, and ignore the way that the people who are actually from those land are living. You know what I mean? What I'm saying is, like, if we decide, okay, well, I can afford to move to Mexico, and if you've heard my last shows, I've been thinking about moving to a community in Mexico, but I wouldn't go there to simply exploit or to enjoy the fruits of their land and ignore the community around me. I feel if you're going to come into a different community, not only should you contribute to that community and should you consult with that community about what it is they want and work together, not just come in there and take over or ignore. Because I feel like, at least for me, there's something wrong with coming in there and you see the poverty, you see the suffering in various ways, yet you do nothing about it. You just come in so that you can use this area to your benefit and live in a way that is going to be more fruitful to you. You can't be ignorant to other people's pain. You have to be compassionate, especially if we're talking about moving into different communities and those communities are suffering around us. At least that's my view. So in some ways, Mexico is much more free. But in other ways, the people are dealing with massive more corruption. We definitely have people who are corrupt, and the police are corrupt, and people are getting beat in the streets and killed by the police. But they have a situation where literally cops work with gangs and kidnap people and disappear them. And people get disappeared in this country. If you don't believe that, then your head is in the sand. You're not really adding up the obvious numbers that show this. And what I mean by that is there's so many situations that we might not have all of the evidence, but we can we can look at what's happened in a work, say a journalist has done, and then all of a sudden they get into a car crash or they disappear or some mysterious circumstance. They find a way to kill themselves by slitting their wrist 20 times or something ridiculous and impossible. But it's a lot more undercover. In Mexico, it's out in the open. I mean, people know the cops are corrupt, and it's the mayor and his wife fled the town after people started to realize that they were involved in this in some way, and they are going to be charged with it. But there are other people who say that's not where the corruption stops, and that's not where it really started either, that the mayor is just a piece of the problem. And the disappearance of these students has nearly led to a revolution. There's been massive protests, government buildings burned down, parents and community members seizing government buildings. All kinds of things have happened over the past few months that this has been going on. And if you don't know the story, please do look more into it. There's a really good 4-part documentary that came out from Vice. They were down there, and I definitely recommend it. I think there are some issues with Vice, but I think that's a well-done documentary. I've written a couple articles on this as well. If you search my name in Mexico 43, I think I use that hashtag in all the articles. Find out more about this. Look up Caravana 43, I think it is. Let me see. Let me look it up real quick. This is the website where you can find the stops that the families are making. And let me see if we can pull it up real quick. Because as I said, today's their last day, Saturday, in Houston. And they are going, I'm not sure where next, but their eventual stop will be New York. They've had 3 days of events here in Houston. I can't find it right now, but look up Mexico 43, and you'll find the information about it. And as I said, they're going to be doing tours, speaking events. They did a rally. They did a Q&A. Today, there's some cultural events, a play. There's going to be a potluck with the families. It's a great time to go out there and find out what's happening in other places and how it affects us and what kind of solutions we can come up with this, because I don't think there is a perfect, solution from really any ideology on how to deal with this thing. You can scream about, oh, well, let's just end the government, or let's end capitalism, or whatever your ideas may be, but is that really going to stop these type of things? I think we have to really look at the root causes of these, and whatever those may be is debatable. But let's move on to our surveillance news for this week. So there's been tons of bills put forth as the legislative session has begun again, and there's lots of these bills. They're making headlines because some of them are really awesome. You're like, wow, that's crazy. Somebody proposed that bill. That would really kick the government's ass. Or somebody proposed something crazy, and they're like, holy shit, the government's trying to get away with that. But a lot of them aren't going to go anywhere, and they're not going to pass. So it's interesting to see what people might try to do. But we'll see in the coming months that some of them we'll never hear from again. Others, hopefully, will succeed. There's been 2 bills introduced now in Texas related to StingRay surveillance, and I found one that was introduced on March 11th that would go beyond simply establishing a warrant process for StingRays, which should have been the process already. But that bill has already been introduced by 2 other Texas state representatives. But another one was introduced by State Representative Dwayne Bohawk. The bill would require warrants for the use of StingRay cell phone surveillance and also remove secrecy granted by non-disclosure agreements. Texas House Bill 3165 would require law enforcement to obtain a warrant before the use of cell site simulators or StingRays. The bill would also require an authorized peace officer to sign a sworn affidavit that details the name, the department, and address of applicant, the cellular device that will be monitored, the name of the owner, and the facts of the probable cause for the warrant. So very specific. And the bill would also prevent the state from withholding information based on confidentiality from non-disclosure agreements or other contracts. If this was passed, it would go into effect this September. Now, this is awesome because, the warrants saying, okay, well, we're going to require warrants is one thing. I still think that's problematic because what I'm finding out is through my sources and researching StingRays is that there is an internal review process that they've been using. So, I don't know. I just don't really... I think the warrants is definitely a good step. Let's just say that. It'll be a great step if they actually follow through with it. But having a law that says that it makes it clear the non-disclosure agreements can't stop you from revealing information that the public requests. That's just bullshit. It's an awesome move. So we'll see if this one moves anywhere. And as far as that goes, this week I received responses to my several open records requests with the City of Houston, the Houston Police Department, the Houston Emergency Center, the Houston Airport System, and other agencies looking for information related to surveillance on me, the Houston Freethinkers, and the use of the StingRay tools in various training sessions on activists. The most recent response I got from HPD told me that if they were to release, apparently they said they have 9 different responsive documents, and they gave me a copy of a letter they sent to the Texas Attorney General asking him to deny my request for these various reasons. And basically they said that if they were to give me the information, some of it they said was related to an investigation that never finished, to training materials, and they said that it could put officers' lives in danger, that it could endanger Homeland Security, it could help terrorists and bad guys figure out the tactics, and just a lot of different excuses that I think ultimately aren't going to stand up in court, because I am going to try to partner with the American Civil Liberties Union out here in Houston to file a suit against them. I think, I don't really like to use this court system, but I want to get information out and help us be as aware as possible. And it's been shown time and time again now that the only way the government responds is when threatened with a lawsuit. And, some new information came out of Florida again, and this other story we're about to go over in New York, where they're showing that time and time again, first off, when people request information, the government tends to lie and say that they don't have it, or they withhold some of it, and then when people file suit, they give more, or they say they can't release it for these reasons, but then people file suit and they give it anyways. So they have to be pressured. So I'm trying to apply as much pressure as possible so I can educate each of us on this topic so we can be better informed and learn how to fight and to go around these things and keep ourselves safe and protected. This next story is another positive one. It relates to StingRays as well, and a judge in New York City ruling that the Erie County Sheriff's Department must reveal details of StingRay cell phone surveillance in their county. New York Supreme Court judge has ruled that Erie County Sheriff's Office must comply with public records requests for StingRay cell phone surveillance. The ACLU of New York sued the Sheriff's Office after the department failed to respond to requests regarding how these devices are used. Justice Patrick Nemoyer sided with the NYCLU and ruled that the Sheriff's Office must hand over the data. And while NYCLU staff attorney Mariko Hiroshi said the decision confirmed that law enforcement cannot hide behind a shroud of secrecy while it is invading privacy of those it has sworn to protect and serve. Let me see what else we got here. And they filed suit, of course, after they refused to comply with open records requests. The director of the NYCLU's Western Regional Office, John A. Kerr, said this: "The Sheriff's Office was attempting to prevent the release of information about how it uses StingRays against its own residents. But this is not Iraq or Afghanistan. This is Buffalo. We have a right to know what the sheriff is doing to us in the name of keeping us safe." The judge did not set a deadline for the Sheriff's Office to release these records, but it's still a positive step, and it follows in the heels of Charlotte police being forced to release details that we haven't seen yet, and recently released documents in Florida by the ACLU. So we have 3 examples, and Houston is going to be the 4th example. I'm going to stay on this. I'm going to make sure that we can get as much information out of this as possible and put pressure on these people. I want to find out what they're doing here in Houston and how it relates to what they're doing in Charlotte and in Florida and over there in New York City. So stay tuned to that. And lastly, we had the first person, a California state representative, to question FCC Chairman Tom Wheeler on StingRay surveillance. Now, why would she question the FCC, Federal Communications Commission Chairman? This, of course, is the agency that has now been given power over the internet and regulates utilities, and they fine people on TV if they show their nipples or if they use foul language. Well, since StingRays work by tricking cell phones to believing that they're cell towers themselves and messing with your signals, they have to get permission from the FCC. I've talked about this before. My articles have shown it. The company that makes the StingRays, Harris Corp, based out of Florida, they actually lied to the FCC on their application when they said that these devices were only used in emergency situations. So their whole contract with the FCC approval is bullshit anyways. But it's a positive thing to see California State Representative Doris Matsui on Thursday afternoon. She challenged Tom Wheeler in a DC hearing. This hearing was being held by the Communications and Technology Subcommittee. She asked Wheeler why there wasn't more federal oversight on how the technology is used by local agencies, such as the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department, where she's from. She also declared that the public should have access to more information on the surveillance tools, and this is, of course, coming right after the release of these other documents. And I'm not sure if she was aware of that, but if not, it was a very timely effort, and sure, it's probably all a dog and pony show, but on some level, thank you, Doris, for deciding to question these things, and maybe she legitimately does care and is noticing that the sheriff's department in her area is using them. People are waking up to StingRays. I think it's a great thing. So educate yourself on them. There are a couple of tools that you can download, apps. They're very specific for which phones they work for, but it'll get better as time progresses. Just support the ones you can now, financially, or by using their product, or by sharing the information. And soon we'll have apps on our phones that can not only locate and tell when you're being monitored by a StingRay, but it could scramble the signal somehow. So stay on that. Be supportive. Now, this next topic, something I'm excited to talk about because it's a little different, and I think it's interesting to see a few different angles here. It has to deal with for-profit or private prisons, which most of us, I think, would agree are a horrible, horrible idea. When you have a prison and there's people profiting off of its existence and making money off of its existence, the companies, the corporations behind it, they generally want to keep that prison full so that they have business, and they might even want to say more people in more prisons equals more private prisons and bigger prisons and more contracts with governments and et cetera, et cetera. So you could say that they want people to be in prison. They want the laws to be so silly and stupid that people get locked up over ridiculous things. And I would tend to agree on that. But let's read this story and then let's talk about some different angles. The Department of Justice has closed a for-profit prison in Texas following riots. The Federal Bureau of Prisons has canceled its contract with Management and Training Corporation for its for-profit prison in Raymondville City, Texas. This contract means the Willacy County Correctional Center has shut down, and about 400 prison workers are out of work in an area with one of Texas's highest unemployment rates. The prison was originally a facility for Immigration and Customs Enforcement before being taken over by MTC. The facility has been plagued with problems. Most recently, on February 20th, inmates rioted and took control of the prison. And check out this picture. It's pretty crazy. The whole prison, there's like fires and smokes. I mean, it looks like a riot. The inmates have now been shipped to undisclosed prison locations. A 2014 report by the ACLU found that people incarcerated in private prisons are often abused and lacking oversight by the Bureau of Prison. No surprise there. People are abused in most prisons, whether they're government or private. And as I said, I think that this incentivizes corporations or individuals who own these to lobby for laws that are more aggressive against drug crimes and whatever else they can to latch people into their system to keep their businesses going. And I know that there's the other argument where there's people who would, and maybe those in my audience, who would jump towards privatization of everything. And I've talked in the past how I don't think a blanket response of privatize it is always going to be the answer. I think there is a lot to say for privatizing various businesses and creating competition, etc. But I've talked about this in past shows. I think water is an issue. Go check the YouTube channel, search youtube.com/consciousresistance and search water privatization on our videos, and you'll find an older one I did and hear what I feel about that. But that's one of them. And in this private prisons is another issue where I think we need to take some time and really think about it. Now, last year I did a short little Texas tour, and I was a cameraman for Gary Johnson, former Libertarian Party presidential candidate, and Ben Swan, and had some good conversations with both of them. But I was talking with Gary Johnson just about his ideas, and I've interviewed him a couple times as well, and he's a supporter of private prisons. Now, this was interesting, though. His concept was basically, he said this: look, if you eliminate the drug war first, end the drug war, then you reduce so much of the prison, and also retroactively release people who were locked up under the drug war from prison, and you end all that crap, then you end up with a extremely reduced prison population, down to only the rapists, the murderers, the violent people, the actual quote-unquote criminals that need to be segregated from the typical population. Again, I still don't believe that a regular prison institution is the right way to go about that. I think prisons need to be reformed and maybe even completely abolished, and have treatment centers and therapy and help for these type of people. But my point is, they need to be segregated from society. So Gary Johnson says reduce or end the drug war, and then that reduces the prison population, and then it brings it down to a much smaller level that could be managed, and people could handle those institutions from a private standpoint and give better treatment than the government could, or the government chooses to. And I think that's a hell of an idea. So what are your thoughts on private prisons, for-profit prisons? Are they all completely bad one way? Is there a way to work this? Is there a way to take these institutions away from the government and into the private industry that wouldn't end up disastrous? Leave some comments in the YouTube video or on the SoundCloud, or send me an email, derek@theconsciousresistance.com. I think it's an interesting topic, and one that I'd like to explore more in future shows. The next thing I want to talk about is the differences in protests and type of protesters from nation to nation, specifically the United States and everywhere else. Now, I do want to say I'm not advocating violence, of course, in any kind of way. I often see people will post videos or pictures on Facebook and social media and be, wow, look at this protest, there's 100,000 people in the streets, or look at these guys, they're like taking the cops head on. And then they'll show an American protest, and it's like, okay, the numbers are real small and people are just holding their signs. And I'm not saying that we need to be violent again or need to be aggressive or anything like that. I'm just saying, what is the difference? I want to look at this and ask the question, like, what's the difference between these nations, these countries? Is it fluoride? Is it Americans are scared? Is it just that Europe has a trend towards a more radical form of protest? Protesters and police battle outside the European Central Bank. And look at this crazy image of police cars burning on flames. And were these provocateurs or were these actual protesters? I don't know. Protesters with the Blockupy Alliance battled with riot police early Wednesday in Frankfurt, Germany, at the opening of a new headquarters for the European Central Bank. An estimated 7,000 people rallied and fought with the police, who threw tear gas and fired a water cannon. Around 550 protesters were detained, and 94 police were supposedly injured by stones, and 7 police cars were set on fire. The protesters came from France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Denmark, Italy, Spain, Portugal, and several other countries to show their solidarity with Greece and call for an end to austerity. So obviously, on one hand, this is huge, economic news. The austerity continues to destroy the European Union, and people are getting sick of it and just saying, we're not going to let you take from us anymore, and they're doing these things. And maybe, the difference between this and the United States is that they're further ahead, and the centralized control, they have this gigantic European Union controlling all of these nations and, taking from them and forcing debt on them. And it's, of course, an engineered scheme in order to destroy these nations and push towards a global government. But maybe they're just further along in the United States, and people haven't lost enough and are still fat and happy in the United States, so they're not ready to go out there and hit the streets and burn cop cars. Now let's take out another one here. This is in Canada. This is North America, okay? Canadians, right? They're not too different than the United States. Thousands of Canadians protest proposed anti-terror bill. Around 1,500 people gathered in Toronto's Nathan Phillips Square on Saturday to protest the Canadian government's proposed anti-terror bill, which critics say will grant the government dangerous new powers. The Toronto action was one of 55 rallies taking place across the nation as part of a national day of action against Bill C-51. This anti-terrorism bill would grant the Canadian government expanded powers to fight alleged terror threats. Critics believe the language in the bill is vague and grants the Canadian Security Intelligence Service overreaching powers, including the ability to take down websites and other networks without judicial approval. So 1,500 people in one spot, other people, thousands across the country, spread out in 55 locations. Last week, in Israel, the week before the elections, we had this tens and thousands. I can't remember what the article said, but it was definitely in the tens and thousands of people protesting against Netanyahu. Then we've got this. This is a bill that's being pushed here in the United States. And, a lot of people freak out about a lot of different bills. But this one's important because it's sort of a revival of older efforts to control the internet with pushing fears of cybersecurity. Now, some of you veteran activists for the past at least been around for the past 4 years may remember the names SOPA, PIPA, CISPA. These were bills that we fought against, and people took to the streets and protested all around the country, and websites shut down and black out the internet and all this stuff. And we haven't really seen a push like that since then, despite efforts and bills and even more control of the internet still continuing to happen. People just either have not paid attention, or they fell off the activism, or I don't know. But there's things like ACTA, there's the TPP, there's other forms of control that are coming, and that are going to affect the United States, and people don't really seem to be standing up for it. I don't really know. And again, I don't think that protesting in the streets is the only effective way. I think that there are much more effective ways, but I think it's definitely something you should do in your repertoire of activism. Hit the streets, talk to people, whether you hold a sign or not. I don't really hold signs, but I have conversations, I do videos, I pass out flyers, and get out there. And it's important for people to see, hey, people are out there doing things and giving a shit. And every time some younger, fresh out of high school, fresh out of college minds come and get involved with the free thinkers, they usually want to hit the streets. They're excited about seeing videos and things like that, and they want to talk to people. But critics are saying this new cybersecurity bill grants expanded surveillance powers. Digital privacy groups are condemning a new bill they say poses threats to whistleblowers and gives the United States government expanded access to digital information of private individuals. Last Thursday, the Senate Intelligence Committee approved the Cyber Security Information Sharing Act, or CISA, of 2015 with a vote of 14-1. The ACLU, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, FreedomWorks, and the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers were part of a large coalition of groups who spoke to the committee warning about dangers of the bill. CISA would allow the government to use private data gathered from companies in criminal proceedings without a warrant. Earlier this month, the Center for Democracy and Technology wrote a letter stating, quote, "The lack of use limitations creates yet another loophole for law enforcement to conduct backdoor searches on Americans." CISA. So I bring this one up now after showing these burning of cop cars and thousands of people in Frankfurt, Germany, protesting the central bank, and people protesting a quote-unquote anti-terror bill in Canada, people protesting Netanyahu in Israel, and the examples are, there's many of them. And in the United States, we have this bill that some are saying this is like this new Patriot Act of the internet is one of the things I've heard it called, and most people don't even know about it. They're not doing anything about it. We've also got torture. Next Saturday is the Global Day of Action Against Torture, in case you care about that. And I honestly haven't been getting that much of a response. We did get a powerful response back in January, so I'm not trying to condemn anybody and say, like, oh, we can't organize anything or whatever. I think we do take action, but it just looks different. What are your thoughts? Do you think that the Europeans are just more radical and they're ready to burn down cop cars? Do you think that's the solution? I don't. I hope that people will pursue all these methods of protesting, hitting the streets, definitely confronting police violence. I've talked about it in the past. I think if cops are violent towards us, we have the right to defend ourselves. That doesn't mean to be violent, but to diffuse the situation, to remove them from our communities, things like that. But I think that in addition to protesting, writing articles, doing podcasts, passing out flyers, etc., we have to build solutions through agorism. And I'm going to be doing a podcast on that, exclusively talking about what is agorism and who's Samuel Konkin and how do these ideas play. And those are my solutions because, as I've said before, protesting definitely helps in certain ways. But I feel like some people, they don't want to build now because starting a community garden now and working on solutions to create us more free now, it sounds like, okay, that's cool, but it also sounds kind of boring. It sounds difficult. Like, you have to do something now. Oh, okay, I want to save the world, but I have to do it now? I think I'll just sit here and watch the world crumble and hope that when shit gets bad enough, we can all band together and go fight them and burn their buildings down and take over. Because that seems more exciting. People, like, we crave this drama, this excitement of get out there and fight. But, dude, it's not going to be like that. People will die. People will get their freedom taken away. It's not going to be just this fun, like, riot is whatever, we're running around, we're kicking the cops' ass. Like, it's going to be fucked up. And human beings are going to die if that's the route we take. Or we could build now. You don't want to get to the point where your only options are, look, there's a FEMA camp down the road and FEMA's promising they're going to help and they got food for families who come there. Or we can go loot and riot. Or we can go try to battle the cops. Or guess what? There's another option. You can build now, and we'll be over here with our community gardens and our community farms and our sustainability projects and our land, and we'll offer you some seeds and say, hey, come work with us. You don't have to go work with the government. You don't have to go loot and riot. You don't have to go fight them. Just come build, and we'll create something new. Those are the real solutions. But, I kind of went on a tangent there. But back to my main point is, what are your thoughts on the differences between these nations and protests, and why it looks different from one place to the next? My last story for the day comes from benswan.com, and I did a great interview with Brandon Turbeville, the journalist Brandon Turbeville, which is available on theconsciousresistance.com, discussing the geopolitical landscape, including Ukraine, Russia, Syria, Turkey, all these developing situations. And you should check that out. It's on the SoundCloud. It's on the YouTube. And this is just sort of an update on this ongoing revival of a Cold War between the two countries. Russia this past week launching military exercises around their nation. The Russian military conducting military exercises involving more than 45,000 troops, warplanes, and submarines. The exercises come after the United States and other North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, nations conducted similar exercises near Russia's borders. Reuters reports that President Vladimir Putin made his first public appearance since March 5th on Monday morning as he met with Kyrgyz Republic President Almazbek Atambayev, at the Constantine Palace outside the Russia's second city of St. Petersburg. Monday marks the first anniversary, this past Monday, of Crimea's secession from Ukraine and annexation by the Russian Federation. Putin ordered the Russian Navy's Northern Fleet to full combat readiness during exercises in the Arctic North. The exercises were supposedly aimed at challenging recent drills by Norway. 5,000 troops in Russia's eastern military district participated in drills, as did 500 troops from Chechnya. They said that their drills are meant to focus on fighting Islamic extremists. But at the same time, the Russian authorities say that, they're doing this to show that NATO is trying to amp up their forces. The United States, of course, putting its soldiers near the border on Ukraine. There's a great article on Paul Craig Roberts' websites discussing further the positioning that's taking place, how the United States diplomats have been sending their diplomats into the nations surrounding Russia, more than likely to try to tell them, hey, look, we need you on our side. Let us get a foothold in your nation so we can start putting pressure on the Russian government. And some people have some really dire forecasts that they're like, why is the United States fucking with Russia, who has the largest nuclear arsenal in the world? Why are they pushing towards it? This is the neoconservatives. This is the New World Order. This is these elitists. I think most of it is probably a fear campaign. I don't believe that these two nations, maybe their leaders believe that they're opposing each other, but there's so much more that goes into this. The bankers are behind most of this banker war. All wars are banker wars. So if it's stoking the flames economically or keeping people in a scared state, they will do it. So I tend to feel like this. So honestly, I'm not really that afraid, but I do think it is kind of scary. But at the end of the day, I don't believe that what we're seeing is anything more than a bigger dog and pony show on an international scene. And either Obama and Putin are, shaking hands and laughing about this in the back room, or they believe that this is what really is going on, and they're doing their best to oppose each other and to, try to boast their ego. And it's more of some ego bullshit. So. But it's definitely something to keep your eyes on, because it's a crazy situation that's happening, and why the United States is pushing towards Russia like this, a nation that can defend itself. This isn't Iraq, this isn't Afghanistan or Libya or any of these other nations that we've come in and just overthrown with no problem. This is a very well armed and prepared and defended nation that has the ability to harm not only the United States but all of our allies in Europe with its weapons. So why we're doing this, I'm not sure, but I hope the United States pulls its head out of its ass pretty soon. That is all I got for you guys today. Thank you for listening. I really do appreciate it. All of my articles, of course, can be found at derekbros.contently.com if you want to find out more or read over the articles that I just posted. They'll all be in the information for the SoundCloud and for the YouTube channel. Please subscribe to our SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/TCR live. Follow us on Facebook at the Conscious Resistance Network. Follow us on Twitter at the Conscious RN. You can find me on Twitter at DBrosLiveFree. And subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Conscious Resistance. Thank you guys for listening. Look out for my other podcast on agorism and Samuel Konkin. check out the website, look at the book tab. You're going to find out more information on the book that'll be coming out soon. And if you're going to be in Philadelphia, it'll be great to see you. If you're in Houston or Austin, I'll be doing some book events in April. And you'll hear more about that in the coming weeks. Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoy your weekend. As always, if you can hear this, you are the resistance. Peace.